Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the KPC podcast. My name is Carson Turner.
And I'm Hannah Thurman.
Today we have a lot to talk about. We always have a lot to talk about, actually, but I'm hearing some reverb. Someone close the door. We're going to do that again.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering if that was going to pick up or not.
Okay, let's do that again. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the KPC podcast. My name is Carson Turner.
And I'm Hannah Thurman.
Today, we've got 4 stories to discuss. Some of them are going to be long. Some of them are going to be short. So why don't you just sit down and make a nice cup of tea and enjoy what we have to say. Hannah has our first story. Take it away.
All right. Well, something recently happening in Seattle, which I'm actually really excited about, is that the city of Seattle has filed a motion in a court to vacate or void all misdemeanor marijuana convictions in the city. So this request would affect about 542 people that are incriminated right now, and then and then the city has also requested the dismissal of outstanding misdemeanor possession charges. So Washington was the first U.S. state to legalize marijuana for recreational use in 2012, which I didn't know. I didn't remember that it was Washington. Huh. Yeah. I just kind of assumed California, but
I thought it was Colorado.
Oh yeah, this article is saying Washington was, and this is Fortune, but yeah, maybe.
So wait a minute, they decriminalized it in Washington, which is where Seattle. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, well it's a motion they filed the motion right now, so it hasn't gone into effect or anything, but This is the first of its kind. I think there's been a lot of congressmen and women from both sides of the spectrum, I think, that have been pushing to get rid of this now that people are legalizing it in different states. You know, why do we have people convicted of it in jail, sitting in jail if it's legal now in the state? That just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think, especially since our jail system is incredibly messed up, I think, in that I think a lot of jails are becoming overcrowded, and so getting rid of 542 people may not seem like a lot, but I think it will really benefit those people in the first place and just the jail situation. But I'm really excited. I think it has a good chance of going through. I'm excited to see what happens with that and if other states follow.
Yeah, I think part of my theory about legalizing marijuana, I think the reason that it took so long for this stuff to start picking up is because people have been in prison for it. So it's kind of awkward for them to be like, hey, you know how we put you in prison for a few years? You're good. Yeah. It's expired. But I've seen a lot in this, especially in the state of Kansas. I interned at a local news station over the summer, and I followed one of my days. We went to this random field way up northern Kansas, and this guy had I don't know how much weed, a bunch of weed basically, and they had to burn it all down and stuff. But we were talking to the police and the sheriffs, and they said, if we would have stumbled upon this 3 years later, it wouldn't have meant anything because even Kansas is going to legalize it by then. But it was just kind of an interesting tidbit. But
yeah, well, I wonder. I was surprised that it would only release 542 people. I would assume that, I guess that's just Seattle, but imagine if this was nationwide. How many people, I should have found that number, are in jail because of marijuana use or possession charges, just little things like that. Because...
Well, I imagine if Kansas has been... Now it's if you get caught with weed, it's more of just you have to pay a fine. So I almost think that for most states, especially if Kansas is such a conservative state, that I don't know as many people are jailed as I would think. But yeah, if you find that number, let me know because I kind of want to know.
I do too.
But I guess while you're searching for that, I will go into... I have a gigantic tirade to talk about here. So interestingly enough, a recent Reuters poll found more millennials are becoming Republican. So the poll had questioned 16,000 participants from the ages of 18 to 34. And interrupt me anytime you find the number, by the way. Feel free to.
I'm looking it up right
now. So the participants compared their political beliefs from 2016 to 2018. They found that all Americans, or all millennials, had 27% in 2016, 27% of all millennials were Republican, and now 28% of them are Republican. That's a very minor increase. But amongst white people, it's increased from 33% to 39%. And for white men specifically, this is insane. For millennial men, white men, in 2016, 36% of them said they were Republican, but in 2018, 46% of them identify as Republican. A 10% increase in 2 years.
That's
mind
really
you,
interesting.
Yeah, mind you, I mean, it's 16,000 participants. They don't speak for the whole country, but I kind of was wondering, well, why are so many people becoming conservative or Republican? And I have a little theory on that. I've talked multiple times about the regressive left and their shameful tactics to make life less fun, as I call it. This regressive left has gone after the Simpsons character, Apu. They, last week, couldn't fathom the idea of Kanye West being a fan of Donald Trump. They also refer to people like Jordan Peterson, who I have a whole story that we're going to talk about later, Steven Pinker and Ben Shapiro as alt-right figures, which, funny enough, Jordan Peterson's apolitical. He doesn't have an affiliation. Steven Pinker is an anti-Trump college professor liberal, and Ben Shapiro in 2016 was the #1 target for anti-Semitic hate from the alt-right. But that doesn't matter to this new regressive left. If you say one thing that they don't agree with, they will go after you full force. So let's get into today's story. Last Saturday on Twitter, this user named @dumbkazia tweeted in all caps prom with her prom dress. And this guy, Jeremy Lamb, he quoted the tweet saying, "My culture is not," that was in all caps, so I had to read it like that, "your goddamn prom dress." And by the way, Jeremy, he's wearing an Adidas hat, which is a German company. So, buddy, my culture is not your goddamn headwear if you want to just be stupid about it. But then this other Twitter user, his name is Sir William Ratchet. These Twitter names are just so crazy. But he did some diving on his Twitter account and found these two tweets. I'm not going to say them, but you can see that if you're going to tell people not to, they're going to be on the screen too, by the way. If you're going to tell people to not be racist, you probably shouldn't have tweets like that buried on your Twitter account, or at least you should be smart enough to delete them. So,
Wow.
Yeah. And then I'm going to need the rest of my screen.
I was
You're fine.
clicking.
So, the bullying continued for this poor girl who just posted pictures of her prom dress. This one girl said, "Oh, you know, you look beautiful and all in this dress and all, but I'm curious, are you part Chinese?" And then the girl said, "Nope, it's just a dress that I found and I like it." And then this other girl said, "Was the theme of prom casual racism?" And then, of course, Kazia said, "Nope, it's just a dress." And my thing is, if the biggest argument for racism today is a dress, then racism is not the #1 problem in America. We have so many problems in our country. Racism is one of them, but if you're going after people and telling them what they can and cannot wear, controlling their choice, that is not freedom. And
I saw one response to it. It was the only time that I
Yeah.
had seen it on my timeline, and someone tweeted, like young girls have such a hard time like being comfortable in like their own skin and like yada yada yada, and we shouldn't be tearing her down. Like this poor girl, like probably thousands of people are attacking her for a dress that she didn't think anything of. And I think that cultural appropriation is a very relevant thing prevalent thing in our country, but I don't think a lot of us know like what the boundaries are for that, because
that's my problem with it.
Because for me, I mean, I'm not Asian, so I don't know how I would feel if I were Asian and I saw like that happen.
Yeah.
But it's easy for me to sit here and say, yeah, I don't understand the problem with it, because I've never, like I don't know what it feels like I don't know. It's a very confusing thing for me to wrap my head around, because I've never been in that position.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if it's something that could potentially incite hate and violence, that's when cultural appropriation could stand in. If the girl was wearing a swastika, then yeah, people should say you probably shouldn't wear a swastika. But I feel like the weird thing is the civil rights movement fought so we could integrate cultures. And everything this girl has said is, I just want to integrate a culture that I like. But that's considered racist.
That's
me,
like
that's
if people like watching or reading the like Japanese
manga
stuff,
like
I don't know, like I agree with you on that. That's just kind of integrating cultures, and I do think it's ridiculous sometimes, because if like Kylie Jenner or Kendall Jenner braid their hair, like I remember a couple years ago they did the braids, and people were like, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't braid your hair like that. It's just a hairstyle.
Yeah. And I also see a lot of Asian people in my dining hall who wear American band shirts. I see Nirvana and Pink Floyd, which here's a pro tip from someone who listens to music. I mean, everyone listens to music. I don't know. That was a weird preface. But anyways.
Listens to those bands, maybe?
They have not listened to those bands if they have those shirts. But I don't go up to them and be like, hey, how dare you appropriate our American band culture? It's like, no, they're wearing a T-shirt because they think it's cool. And it does look cool. I've never met one person who's worn a Pink Floyd shirt who actually knows any songs by Pink Floyd, which I think is kind of funny.
I know maybe two.
Really? I see. I don't even know any, so I should probably own a Pink Floyd shirt. But yeah, kind of my thing is that if we're not supposed to represent different cultures with diversity, are we just supposed to only stick to our own cultures? Isn't that like separate but equal, like what we fought against in the 60s? So why are we doing that? It's backwards thinking, unless you're doing it to incite violence, like I said. Let's see, what else do I have? So we came to that conclusion that if you're just kind of scouring the internet to bully somebody who is looking at another culture, it doesn't make you a hero who's trying to end racism. It just makes you a jerk. And then I've kind of noticed this with the whole, the cultural appropriation thing. It's not necessarily pro-minority. I've seen it to be more anti-white. And this is something that George Orwell, he criticized communists for this a lot. He noticed that socialists and communists, they're not pro-poor people, they're just anti-rich. They could care less about the poor people. And I'm starting to think that's what it is. I see a lot of anti-white things a lot. It's like, oh, you can't talk about this because you're white. Oh, white privilege this, white privilege that. And I have this article from National Review written by Dennis Prager where he kind of breaks down what he calls it the fallacy of white privilege and says that we often mistake white privilege for other things that's not white. So like, for example, family privilege. You are privileged if you have a mom and a dad versus a family who just is a single mom. That doesn't have anything to do with race or, what am I saying? What's the other thing? Majority privilege. So it's not necessarily your skin color, it's if you're a natural born American, because I guarantee if you go over to China, they're not teaching kids in school to step aside with their Asian privilege that they have, Anywhere you go, if you're a minority, you're gonna see a majority of people. That's just how the world works. There's not one place where everything is absolutely equal. How we go about it is kind of the big problem. And that's where like I said, I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist, but I'm saying that we can't blame things like a majority privilege as something that is inherently evil, I don't know, do you have any thoughts on that? Or
I think that white privilege is definitely a thing because I think of it, especially with like police brutality, like we don't have to, we grow up, we have a family, we have kids. I don't have to tell my son to, if a cop pulls you over, say sir or ma'am, act like this. Like, I think there's been a fear that's been installed in people of color, especially African Americans, because of they're more targeted by the police. And I was just looking at the numbers in jail, and it said that I think blacks have nearly 4 times more likely than whites to be arrested for marijuana. And so incarceration especially, there's a lot more people in jail that are African American and people of color. And I think that's because we do have a privilege. I think a lot of people still think that, oh, you grew up in the hood, like you are probably smoking marijuana. And there's a lot of things that I think lead to that. And this is kind of just random thought, but I was watching, there was a Grey's Anatomy episode from last season, I think. And at the end, it kind of dealt with police brutality and a young boy was shot by the police and he was like playing baseball or something and they mistook it for a gun or something. And, at the end of the episode, one of the surgeons who's black and has a son, was teaching him okay, put your hands up, make him sure that you can see him clearly. We will never have to do that. And I 100% think that a lot of families do tell their kids that because it has become such a problem.
Yeah, well, I know that, there are more factors to it than that. I do agree with you on the most part that it's unfair that, black people have to kind of be ingrained into that. It's almost like they have to be more active about, being arrested. But I know that some of the incarceration rates have to do with more cops kind of go and patrol inner cities where a lot of this gang violence happens. It's like black on black violence is like what kills more black people than police or even white people. But a lot of it is because the single motherhood rate in these inner city communities is like 70%. And raising a kid is no easy task, especially if you are a single mom and you're trying to raise a kid in an environment that's inherently dangerous. The likelihood that that kid won't have a father figure to make sure that he's responsible. I mean, that's the dichotomy of your parents. Your mom is supposed to be comforting and soft towards you. Your dad's supposed to be stern to make sure that you are a respectful human being. But if the dad's not there, the kid is more likely to fall into that dangerous environment of crime. And I think that's where we see a lot of those higher incarceration rates, because unfortunately, they're just statistically, with the single motherhood rate, they're just more likely to fall into that. And I think that's the problem that needs to be completely addressed, because no one ever talks about that. I think that there are just so many disadvantages. And I know one thing that a lot of really, really far-right people criticize is that for black people, it's easier for them to get into college because they have more scholarships available to minorities, and then also because they have a thing on the SAT where they don't have to score as high because the universities have a diversity quota that they have to hit. I think that's necessary, because whatever we can do to get these people out of these dangerous environments, to get them into higher education, is absolutely necessary. And I don't know. It's just there's so many things, because I've read into it, and there's just so much that just goes into the whole problem with the culture of inner city black communities and misrepresentations of being arrested, and it's a complicated problem. Yeah. It's such a mess. But yeah, let's see. I had something else that I was going to talk about. I think that's actually the end of my story, and I kind of want to just stop it on there too, because I feel like that was a good note. So what is your next story?
My next story is on the NRA banning guns at an upcoming Pence event. So the NRA announced that guns are going to be banned for Vice President Mike Pence's upcoming speech, which is at the organization's annual convention, which is later this week. And so some students from Parkland tweeted about it. Cameron Caskey, who we've talked about a couple times, tweeted a screenshot of the note and said that the NRA has evolved into such a hilarious parody of itself. Another student responded to his from Parkland and said, the NRA will keep Penn safe without any weapons, but when it comes to children, they want guns everywhere. And then he said, can someone explain this to me? Because it sounds like the NRA wants to protect people who help them sell guns, not kids. So the ban, this is from a political article also, the ban is not for the whole weekend. The NRA said on its site that lawfully carried firearms will be permitted, but let's see, what ones are not? Firearm accessories, knives, or weapons of any kind will be prohibited. And then a parent wrote of a student that was killed in Parkland said that he is criticizing the ban because on so many levels this is enlightening. According to the NRA, we should want everyone to have weapons when we are in public, but when they put on a convention, the weapons are a concern. I thought giving everyone a gun was to enhance safety. Am I missing something? The NRA spokeswoman, Dana, said that, she put out a statement saying, NRA banned nothing. The media does this every year. It's Secret Service SOP, and they supersede all starting local control. Don't complain about your eroding credibility and people calling you fake news when you publish things like this. So I have a lot of opinions on this because, and they're both kind of, I feel like they kind of contradict one another. My first thought when I saw this was that's so ridiculous, and I side with the Parkland students 100%. It's an irony, like straight up, they are like, we need guns, protect the student, or we need guns, teachers need to have guns to protect their students, like more guns, give more guns, that will help the problem. And then they do this, and also NRA banning nothing. I don't know why she said that, because they literally put out a statement saying firearms, like literally prohibited.
But did she say that it was Secret Service who demanded that, not the NRA?
Okay, so the Secret Service, they supersede the NRA, but that's my second thing. Okay, I get it because it's the president and the vice president, but it's just like, I don't even know. It makes me so angry. Like, they literally, like, I get that they're important people, but they're not more important than our students and our kids in this country. Like, they can put them on a pedestal and protect them because, you know, there have been shootings for previous presidents. I understand that, but it's an NRA convention. Like, aren't there going to be guns there anyway?
Yeah,
so
it's not like the audience is going to dislike Trump and Pence, you know?
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it seems to me that the NRA themselves aren't the ones who want to get rid of those guns. It's the Secret Service, which that's kind of where my beef would be with them. It's like either all of it's okay or none of it's okay. And I feel like if I were to be consistent in what I've been saying, then it's like, yeah, people should be able to bring their guns. But I mean, it's to me, it just sounds like it's out of the NRA's control. But I don't know, that's kind of a weird policy. But then again, it's like, you know, Ronald Reagan was, you know, attempted assassination, JFK, so.
Right, and that's why I kind of, like, I get it.
Yeah.
But I'm annoyed because I wish things were different.
I share that same feeling. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to talk about is the good old mainstream media, which America has been losing trust and faith in. And you wonder why. Well, it's because NBC on Saturday ran this report on clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson. I talk about him like all the time. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of his work. But NBC decided to do a report on him, and I think the best way to describe the falsehoods of the media, because I've been watching Jordan Peterson's lectures and stuff since like last July, so I've had my fair share of knowing what type of person he is. But I think it'd be good if we just go through this video and break down why people don't trust the media and how they purposefully falsely misrepresented Jordan Peterson to make him look evil. And the funny thing is about this video that I have up here, it's got 7 likes and 273 dislikes. So people are paying attention to the falsehoods. So I'm gonna just like pause it whenever I have stuff to say. So here we go.
However, I received that information
in a time of polarizing politics.
Firing Bob Mueller would be the wrong.
Dr.
Okay, so right away. Yeah, we're 6 seconds in and I've already got a problem. So this title here says, Canadian author finds fame as alt-right intellectual. So they already don't hesitate to put him into the group with the alt-right, which I mentioned earlier in my first story that he's apolitical. He doesn't use politics as a leverage to explain his viewpoints or anything. But just because people on the right are fans of him, people on the left are fans of him, but they quickly say, oh, this guy, he's just like the alt-right, which are racist people who they're anti-Semitic and I mean, they're not even Republican or even on the right. They don't even subscribe to those ideals. But yeah, right off the bat, they just want to throw them in there. So
you're not going to decide what words I'm going to use.
And that's it. They don't explain what he's talking about. So the thing about this is, since they've already painted him as an alt-right figure and you see him say something evil, like you're not going to make me say what I want to or what you want me to say, you're going, oh my God, this guy, he must be pretty evil, you know, because he's famous for the Bill 16, the gender pronouns, he spoke out against it, so then you're going, oh, he must hate trans people. But he does not hate trans people. He's had more letters from people of trans saying thank you for standing up against this bill because we don't want our group to be used as a political crutch. He is saying that any bill that condemns speech at all is dangerous, regardless of what the intention is. But with the way that they frame the quote, you can make it easily, you can tell that NBC wants to paint him as a transphobe.
In the past 2 years,
I progress.
an academic has been adopted as a hero of the Donald Trump-loving alt-right.
And then again, you know, they just pin him alongside with the alt-right. I would go through this whole video, but we're 18 seconds in and it's been like 2 minutes, so I feel like I could do this for like 6 hours. But it's like, do you get why? It's like no one trusts the mainstream media because they blatantly misrepresent people.
And you'll get something from a different news site and it'll be the complete different.
Yeah.
But it really is up to them to pan out how they want people to portray this, how they want to portray the person. And they do have so much power. And I just wish that people would just be honest and give people that are watching like the actual news and the, you know, context with the quote.
Yeah,
That's so important.
Absolutely.
Because, you have to leave it up to the person that's watching to make that decision.
Yeah.
You can't force them to say well,
look how
yeah.
bad he is.
If they're saying he's bad, he's bad.
Yeah, yeah. And they interview some guy who's a journalist who's like, oh, he's incredibly dangerous, blah, blah, blah. So I searched his name. I'm like, okay, this guy they're interviewing is a journalist. Let's see what type of work he's done. He just reviews movies. Why am I going to believe what a movie reviewer has to say about a clinical psychologist? Like, how stupid are these people? I mean, you Google anything that is mentioned in here, you'll be like, oh, wow, that's complete bullshit. They're absolutely lying. And Jordan Peterson, he tweeted about it saying that the interview lasted 90 minutes. From that, they edited the minuscule portions most suitable to the pre-constructed narrative. NBC has no doubt that its audience is ignorantly susceptible to and worthy of manipulation, which is, I don't know. This just shows that independent media that's been on the rise since the internet is probably going to take over, and that's why you should really subscribe to KPC News because we're real. But
True.
yeah. I don't know. Is there anything else you want to bring up, or?
No, my rant is over for the day, I think.
Yeah, I feel like earlier, I think I put in too much rant content, and then I ran out of rant chi so early. Now I'm like, I'm dead. But thank you guys for tuning in, and join us on Thursday for our last KPC podcast for now, or I guess the end of
Before
season
the
one.
summer, yeah.
Yeah, before the semester ends. So we will see you on Thursday.
All right.